Vittarioid ferns of the family Pteridaceae are characterized by silica bodies and a lack of sclerenchyma. Vita in Latin means ribbon or stripe, and the fern shown here is an example of why the name Vittarioid is used to refer to these ferns. Not all Vittarioid ferns look like shoestrings, but since the sample to be identified does, the sample does not belong to the genera Rheopteris, Hecistopteris, Antrophyopsis, Antrophyum, or Scoliosorus. The genus Rheopteris is pinnately divided with rounded sori, and the genus Hecistopteris is minute, forked or lobed with forked veins. Genus Antrophyopsis in general has oblanceolate-shaped fronds. Additionally, it differs from the sample in its pluriceriate areolate venation, linear sori along veins, and spherical apical cells on soral paraphysis. Unlike the sample, which has biseriate areolate venation, sori immersed in deep linear grooves almost at the margin of fronds and funnel-shaped cells on soral paraphysis. Genus Antrophyum similarly differs from the sample in frond shape, venation, sori, and apical cells of the soral paraphysis. Scoliosorus too differs from the unidentified fern by its frond shape, which is oblong about 2.7 cm wide, venation, sori, and soral paraphysis. Similar to the species being identified are other string-like Vittarioids, and these are found across many genera. Though alike in frond shape, they are differentiated by other characteristics. The fern to be identified is not from the genera Vaginularia, Vittaria, Polytaenium, Ananthacorus, or Radiovittaria. Vaginularia is much narrower and has soral paraphysis with slender apical cells, as does Vittaria. Polytaenium was eliminated as the identity of the fern to be identified, as Polytaenium has sori linear along reticulate veins or scattered between veins and lacks soral paraphysis. Ananthacorus differs from the sample in its slender apical cells of the soral paraphysis. Radiovittaria, unlike the sample, has rhizomes radial and polystachous frond arrangement, whereas the unidentified fern has rhizomes dorsiventral and fronds disticus. The unidentified fern was assigned to the genus Haplopteris with its linear frond, biseriate areolate venation, sori linear restricted to submarginal commissures, and terminal cells of paraphysis funnel-shaped. There are several Haplopteris species in Malaysia, but based on the size of the fern to be identified, which is about 10 to 50 centimeters long and 2 to 6 millimeters wide, the smaller Haplopteris were eliminated as the identity of the sample. That is, the fern could not be Haplopteris hirta, Haplopteris capillaris, Haplopteris dareicarpa, or Haplopteris angustissima. The fern to be identified looks quite similar to Haplopteris elongata, but Haplopteris elongata had stiped fronds, the wings of the frond not extending to the stipe base, costa usually distinct adaxially on the lower portion, terminal cells of paraphysis funnel-shaped and as long as broad, and uniformly colored rhizome scales. Also, the newly emerged fronds and crosiers remain green. Conversely, the fern to be identified has sessile fronds, indistinct costa and veins, terminal cells of paraphysis, though funnel-shaped twice as long as wide, rhizome scales having a dark middle band and slightly paler margins, and young fronds red. Haplopteris flexuosa is not the sample identity, as Haplopteris flexuosa is slightly wider with the costa narrowly concave adaxially and raised abaxially, and with the funnel-shaped apical cells of the paraphysis more or less long as wide. Haplopteris sessilifrons is also not the species to be identified, with fronds generally broader, having midrib and margins moderately to strongly raised, and lateral veins more or less visible from above. So the fern observed is identified as Haplopteris ensiformis, characterized by the dorsiventral rhizome, fronds disticously arranged, lamina lanceolate to long linear, 10 to 50 centimeters long, 2 to 6 millimeters wide, leathery, the margin entire, sometimes inrolled, young fronds red, Type usually indistinct, narrowly winged throughout, costa and veins indistinct, story immersed in deep linear grooves almost at the margins of fronds, terminal cells of paraphysis funnel-shaped, 2 or 3 times long as wide, rhizome scales having a dark middle band and slightly paler margins. If you need to know more about Vittarioids, you could look up the references listed. And if you need to learn about the characteristics that identify some other plant species, do subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.